For tonight's class, we're going to start in a seated pose. And we're going to move through relatively quickly from pose to pose. There's quite a lot of content, but it's not a dynamic flow or anything like that. I'm just going to sit here for a moment, let ourselves settle, get our breathing back, calm ourselves a little bit. I'm going to take the palms down, and I'm starting on the block. I would suggest that would be a useful place to be. Depending on how your hips feel. So part of our settling in phase, we're actually going to take some seated twists as well. So we're going to untangle the legs pretty quickly. Just wrap that left foot around, knee pointing forwards. Wrap the right leg across, left arm comes through, and we rotate towards the right side. Now I want to make sure that both sitting bones are on the floor. I'm going to try and relax this lower leg down here. There's a little bit of pressure between the arm and the leg to help us just rotate around a little bit. Draw the belly in, press the tailbone down to the floor, pelvis forwards a little bit. Make yourself to lift up. Now you'll notice that I'm not turning my head towards the rear shoulder. Optional if you want to do that. Otherwise, the heart and the chin stay aligned. And we're just enjoying the breath coming in and getting a sense of lift and rotation in the spine following the breath. And we'll untangle and let ourselves come into the second side. We're not spending super amount of long time in this pose. Foot to the floor if you can, knee high. Rotate yourself gently around to that left side. Try and relax the shoulders down away from the ears. I'm going to release the legs out. Lift myself off the block, or just move that out to the side, hands into the front of the mat. A couple of rounds, a cat-cow. Pulling the chest forwards a little bit. Tilting the pelvis. Spreading the shoulders. You can barrel roll these out to the side as well. You can do any kind of crazy combination that you think of. It feels good in your spine. We just want to get a little bit of movement, especially if we've been sitting all day or for a long period of time at least. So I'm going to roll from the sides, see if you can practice keeping the arms relatively straight so the movement comes through the shoulder joint rather than the elbows. You still get a little bit of work into those wrists, and obviously allow yourself to move in both directions. This time of the day, the spine is a little more supple than it would be first thing in the morning, so you might find it a little more intuitive to move through these. You might find that you can get a little deeper. You might be able to draw the belly in a little more. Try to avoid pulling the chin assertively in towards the chest. Letting the head hang is fine. And taking the time to spread those fingers out as well. I'm going to take it back into neutral. Allow the knees to go wide, toes together. sit back into child's pose. As I walk the hands out, I'm going to bring the hands onto the center line so the palms can face into each other, thumbs to the sky and elbows on the ground. I try and reach the hands as far forward as I can, give them a little wriggle. Then let the forehead come down, bending at the elbows, bring the hands into the nape of your neck. Try and walk your elbows a little further forwards, maybe another half an inch or so. Draw the belly in at the same time and send your tailbone towards the back of the mat, like you're gently drawing it in the opposite way. We had another couple of breaths, see if you can walk your elbows even further forwards. Looking for that sense of stretch into the tricep, and that will actually stretch down into your latissimus dorsi. So you might be feeling a little bit of a tug in the lower back muscles towards the base of your spine and your pelvis meets. That's the bottom of the latissimus dorsi muscle. And we're holding the abdominal muscles in very slightly. Breathing into the ribs. And then we'll let the hands come to the floor. Lift the head gently. Allow ourselves to come back up. Now I'm going to come onto the elbows again, about shoulder distance apart, interlace the hands, and bring my shoulders over the elbows, walk the legs back, and drop the belly gently to the floor for Sphinx pose. I want to press the thighs down, bootlaces down, turn the heels out a little bit, lift the chest, broaden the shoulders, and get a good sense of pressing down through those forearms inside of the wrist. And you draw your belly in. You don't have to keep your head absolutely still, but if you are going to move it, allow it to be small, gentle movements. Now, I try to have my eyes looking several feet in front of the mat rather than down to the floor, and I avoid trying to look towards the sky. You know, in some practices that's encouraged, but you think about the way that you're pulling the neck muscles back and sort of crushing into the vertebral discs in the neck. You have to ask yourself, is that really the thing that you want to be doing? And if it is, if it feels perfectly natural, then it's probably okay. But some of us have got tighter necks, smaller bone gaps, and wouldn't feel comfortable. So play it to your own tune. We'll take a little breath from there. Allow ourselves to come back down to the floor. We're going to bring the hands alongside the bottom of the ribs, palms face down. And on the exhale, press into the hand and peel myself away from the floor, back up onto all fours. And from the front of the mat, I'm going to thread the needle. I'm going to take that right arm up towards the sky, turn the chest. And then drop the hand down and through, and aim to get my shoulder and ear on the center line. Try to keep the hips over the center line as well. Press down into the bottom shoulder and start to elevate my left hand towards the sky. And rather than pulling the hand over, what I actually want to do is try and lead my shoulder behind and let my arm follow. Which might sound like splitting hairs, but it'll make a big difference to how your shoulder and your chest feel. So pressing the shins very lightly into the floor. And if you notice you have a habit of your heels and toes moving towards the center line, the shins technically should be parallel to each other. Last breath here. Whew. Bring the hands back down. Press away from the floor. Take a little breath. The left hand up. Fold that under and through. Again, aiming for the center line. Press the shoulder down. Get a little bit of space into the neck. So it doesn't feel like you're taking all the weight on your neck. And then roll that top shoulder back as you elevate the hand. And we'll bring the hand to the floor and press away. And I'll tuck the toes underneath, just sit back gently, and allow myself to take that block, place that behind. I'm just going to roll up into a squat. I'll place the heels on the block. The feet move out sideways, so the legs are kind of pointing out a nice deep angle. And I'm going to purposefully try and draw my body down through the gap between my thighs as low as I can. Take the hands forwards and then start to walk them out to the side. So I want to keep my arms on the inside of my legs, but I'm trying to take the hands as far back as I dare towards the back of the mat. And then press the hands lightly into the floor. Broaden out the shoulders. And just check that you feel happy with the amount of pressure that you're putting through your elbow joints. Keeping the belly drawn in a little bit. Actually trying to lengthen the chest forwards. They're not the roundest of round backs. There will be some rounding, but we're actually trying to flatten it out a little bit. And then we're going to walk the fingers back, hopefully, towards the front of the mat. Allow ourselves to bring the hands out in front, start to walk them into the front end of the mat, bring ourselves into down dog. And we'll slowly take that block just off to the side of the mat, just so it's cleared out of the way. And adjust my leg length for my down dog. Allow the hips to lift high and flat to the floor, and our armpits pressing down into the ground. Draw the belly in and up. And kind of scooting the waistline into the thinnest waistline you're going to get in this pose. And pressing the heels slightly towards the back of the mat. So again, the word down disappears out of our vocabulary. When you press the heels lightly into the back of the mat, from the sense you're feeling a slight feet sliding along the mat, so you're going to feel a deeper stretch into the back of your calves, through the ankles, and a little bit into the hamstrings. Okay, we'll come forwards into plank. You're going to let the knees come down to the floor, directly underneath the hips. Take a little breath, tuck the toes of the right foot underneath, and send that leg to the back of the mat. And slide it out to the side, so the soles of the foot come to the floor. And walk the hands back in, come up into our fullest version of gate pose. I'm going to press the hand into the hip, just to drop that down a little bit, so we balance the pelvis from lateral side to side movement. Taking the left hand up, so the arms almost against the ear, allow yourself to extend out to the side. And then on the inhale, allow yourself to stretch the hand out as far as you can to the side. And we'll come back on your exhale. Bring the hands to the floor. Press into the hands and the shin, if you're trying to push yourself off of the ground. Everything starts to get nice and engaged. And then slowly lift the foot away from the floor, about the height of the hip, and carefully bring your leg back down the line of the mat. Let the knee travel down to the floor, tuck the toes of the opposite leg. Take yourself slowly and gently into gate pose on the second side. Just walking the feet in, dropping that hand on the hip to stabilize that lateral movement through the pelvis. Right arm comes up. Extend out about half as far as you think you can actually go. And then let yourself stretch up and out. And pressing lightly into the foot that's out to the side, you want to feel the inner groins and thigh just working a little bit. You get a little bit of lift in the buttock on that leg, and you press down through the shin on the supporting leg underneath you. And we'll lift up on an exhale. Bring hands down to the floor. Press it into the ground. Energize. Allow yourself to lift your leg. Swing gently round. Bring the knee back onto the mat. Toes underneath. Allow yourself to move into your down dog. Settle the legs to that happy distance. Feet hip distance apart. And then float into a plank. We're going to take a little breath from there. Allow ourselves to roll the feet over onto the left side. Bring your top foot halfway forward. Press that down to lift the hips even higher. And take the right hand up towards the sky. So try to lift with the hips. Press down through this shin vertically into your foot. The side edge of the opposite leg. Keep the head from hanging completely down. Again, I sort of avoid rolling the shoulders up around your ears. Try and keep it nice and long. We'll bring the hands back down to the floor. Move back into our down dog. Stretch it out a little. Check the placement of the feet. Move into plank. Take the feet over towards the right. Step that top leg halfway in. Lift and open up. Bring the hands back down to the floor. Step back into our down dog. Come forwards into the plank again. Let the knees come down directly underneath. Pressing into the hands and that left shin. Take the right knee out to the side, keeping the bend in the knee. Flex the foot, toes towards the shin. Try and press away from the floor with those two hands and shin. You're actually trying to keep your hips square to the ground and take the knee out to the side. Appreciate that that's going to be different degrees for everybody. But you're trying to keep your pubic bone and your heart over the center line of the mat. Let the knee come back down. Take a little breath. And just pass me out that one. And press down into the floor again. And allow yourself to take the left leg out. Again, trying to avoid hanging out to the side of the mat. Press away from the floor. My arms are shaking and trembling. So is my torso and my legs. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but trust me, everything's working pretty hard. I'm going to let the knees come back down to the floor. Come back onto the elbows. Interlace the hands gently. Elbows are about shoulder distance apart. Walk the legs slowly out into an elbow plank. Again, you want to press down through the forearms, the side of the wrists. Allow yourself to feel your shoulder blades separating out as you try and sort of round across the top of your back. So it's not rounding through the spine, it's rounding out the shoulders a little bit, lifting them away from the ground. Pressing out through some very straight, long, powerful legs to keep the knees from bending. And we'll take this into a side plank, taking the feet over towards the left side, lifting the hip again, keeping the head in line with the body. Right hand stretches up towards the sky, apart from the nasty little itch I got behind my ear. Now bring the hands back down to the floor, back into our elbow plank. Roll onto the second side and press away. So you want to try to avoid dropping down into this lower shoulder. You really want to push away from the floor and protect the integrity of that shoulder girdle. Now you can hear my breathing is quite heavy. I think that's because my body's quite heavy. Holding up is hard work. Okay, we'll bring the hands back down to the floor. Whew. And take ourselves back to down dog territory, which feels a whole lot safer. Now draw the right knee in towards the chest. Bring the foot through into a lunge. Drop the back knee down onto the floor. Untuck the toes, shin over the top of the ankle. And hands onto that front thigh. Allow yourself to lift up. Eventually drop the hands to the side of the body. Float them out to the side and up towards the sky. Shoulders are depressed down a little bit, and drawn towards the back of the mat. The ribs are drawn down towards the hips to avoid that chest flaring up towards the sky. You work into your big toe on the front foot and press the shin down onto the back. Almost there. Bring hands down to the ground. It's on the back. Allow ourselves to lift into our down dog. We'll draw the left knee in, bring that through. Knee down to the floor. Make sure you're comfortable on that kneecap. Check your knees over your ankle on the front foot. Bring the hands onto the front thigh. Gonna allow ourselves to lift. Draw back a little bit. Hips are square to the front of the mat. And then we lift up. So rearrange those shoulders. Draw the ribs in a little bit. It's going to feel like you're scooting your abdominals in towards the back of the mat, going this way, away from the front edge of the mat anyway. We'll bring the hands down to the floor. Step back into our down dog. You might want to bring that block towards the front of the mat so it's within easy reach. Take a little breath from here. So the right knee towards the chest. Bring that foot through into lunge again. And I'm going to bring the block into the inside of the front foot. I'll take the right hand, palm down onto the inside. And I want to see if I can kind of line my leg and my arm so that I can press the thigh and my knee into the back of this arm here underneath me. Then drop the back heel down, turn the chest alongside of the mat, really open up, and then extend the hand up towards the sky. And I press down into that back foot a little bit as well. And I'm trying to work on getting that chest to rotate around. So this is big on the right hip. Now from here, I'm going to take the top arm around, bring that towards like the middle section of my thigh, outer edge, and scoot the bottom hand underneath. See if I can bind the fingers together Well, I try and keep my chest really opened up to the long side. Head extending a little bit, pressing back into that back heel. And I'm going to release. Hand to the outside again. Hand down to the floor. Step it back into my down dog. Now I'll take a little breath from there. Draw the left leg in. And that forwards and have the block on the inside. Left hand comes in. Again, and try and get that leg and arm to work against each other. And then drop the back heel down as if that's a warrior two position for the foot. Allow yourself to turn the chest. You don't take the arm up immediately. You work on getting that rotation round. Hand just sits quite happily on the rib cage here. Lengthen the body out. And then it's an extension of the hand towards the sky rather than the pulling of the shoulder. I'll take a little breath from here. Roll that top arm around. Take a little time to feed it in. And then ease the bottom hand underneath. And see if you can get those to line up without losing too much of that opening of the chest on the long side of the mat. We'll release out of that. Bring the hand down. Scoot the block out of the way. Step it back into our down dog. And I'll take a little breath from there. Allow myself to scissor the right leg to the sky. Bring the knee in towards the chest. Slip through into lunge. Onto the fingertips. Just bring the hands alongside the body a little. Slowly lift the body forwards and up. As you take the hands into the higher version of the crescent pose. Roll those shoulders back again. Draw the ribs back towards the back of the mat. Hands down to the floor. Step back into the down dog. Elevate the left leg into a scissor. Draw the knee in towards the chest. And the foot through into your lunge. Find your balance point. And hands alongside your body as you lift your chest. Ease the hands forwards. Scoot those ribs and shoulders back. And hands to the floor. Back into our down dog. Walk the hands into the back of the mat. Into our first forward bend. Now that's going to take hold of the toes. Index finger and middle finger. Let the elbows move out to the side. Draw my ribs onto my thighs. Press the feet into the floor to try and open up the back of the legs. And then we'll release the fingers back into down dog. Now take a little breath here and just draw the right knee towards the chest, but take the right foot to the outside of the right hand. I'm also going to walk the left hand forwards a little bit. Just drop the elbow down underneath. And allow myself to take the twist, right hand towards the sky. I want to press out through that back leg to get it as straight as you possibly can. You might even have to take a cheeky little look underneath your body. Go, is my knee collapsing down to the floor, or does my leg look pretty straight? If I was painting a picture of a straight leg, is that what my leg looks like now? If not, you know you can press out a little more from that back heel. Now bring the hand back to the floor. Lift up into the lungy position and ease your way back into that down dog. So quite a serious opening up into the hips there. Now draw the left knee in towards the chest. Hold that out towards the front of the mat. Walk the right hand forwards a little to drop the elbow down underneath the shoulder. Allow yourself to take a second side twist. You want to try to keep the foot that's in front of your eyes parallel to the mat and flat to the ground. I wasn't rolling out to the side too much. Now, obviously, everyone's got a little bit of movement there, but you don't want to really have the sole lifting away from the foot. Now, trying to rotate the chest round. By pressing that back heel, the hips are staying a little squarer to the floor. They're not following the chest round. If you're a bit more hypermobile, you'll probably find that a bit of a challenge to get all of your body alignments in place. A little bit stiffer, it's actually a little easier to be in the right position. Bring the hands back to the floor. Whew. And lift ourselves slowly back into that down dog. We're going to come up on the tippy toes. Just take a small, slow walk to the front of the mat. So a few inches at a time, keeping the feet hip distance apart, all the way up towards the front of the mat, and waddle in the last little bit. And once you get to the front of the mat, hopefully that block is still out there. You can turn it on the end, side on, across the mat, just in front of you. We'll take a little breath from here, soften the left knee a little, lift your right heel from the ground, slide your leg back until your big toe is just about to lift off the ground. And send your hips towards the back of the mat so the foot comes to the floor. Bring the block underneath your shoulders and chest. Draw your chest forwards. Try and square the hips to the front of the mat. Two straight legs. Belly's drawn in a little bit. So pyramid pose. Flip over a little bit as we come down. Just move the block out. Just a touch in front again. Got the fingers on the floor. Step the right foot in. Soften the right leg a little. Slide the left leg back. Drop the heel in. Try and keep the feet parallel if you can. Sensing forwards. Bring the block back. Allow yourself to lift again for that second side. Again, fold down, move the brick out of the way. This time we'll step back towards down dog. Draw the right knee in towards the chest and bring that foot through front of the mat, let the back knee down onto the floor. And keep the toes of that back foot tucked under this time. Your hands back behind the line of your own heel. And then try to send your hips towards the back of the mat, sending your pubic bone along the center line of the mat. Now, eventually, you'll be able to sit down onto the heel and allow that front leg to straighten out, toes towards the sky. You might drag the mat with you a little bit. Don't worry about that too much. Keep the hands on the floor, looking towards that front foot. Press down into the back leg. Let ourselves come forwards. So if you're like me and you took the mat with you, just a little adjustment to move it back out of the way, and then take yourself back into your down dog. We'll draw the left leg in, take that through, drop the knee down again, walk the fingers back, take a little breath. If you have got a line down the center of your mat, it's a little bit easier for your belly button and your pubic bone to follow. Ease your way back gently. See if you can land on your sitting bones. Draw the chest forwards a little bit. Press out through the heel. Allow that left front leg to get as straight as you can. Now, there's a big ask on the toes on the back foot. You want the heel pressing into the sitting bone as high as you can. So I'll try to avoid letting your foot sort of roll out to the side too much. Belly drawn in as well. Last little breath here. And then we'll press down. Whew. Bring ourselves back. Wiggle the foot out to the side to untangle the mat. Back into the one as a down dog. So those legs are starting to feel like they've been pretty well stretched out, hopefully, and the hips as well, just a fraction. We'll come forwards into the plank and just drop the knees down to the floor. Spin the feet out to the side. And the good news is, if you still use this block, I'll take it towards the back of the mat now. I'll allow myself to come into happy baby, and then we're going to take the wide leg version of that as well. So hands behind, scoot your bum forwards a little bit, your spine down, allow your head to be on the block. Now, if you can get into happy baby and you can get a perfectly flat spine and your shoulders aren't sort of fighting against you a little bit, then you may possibly not use the block. Maybe you don't need it. For me, it's just the difference between sort of being comfortable in the pose and being able to breathe and kind of fighting it a little bit. And we want to be as comfortable as we can, because that's the way we can breathe easily and keep ourselves kind of focused on the entirety of the pose rather than just one part of our body. I'm going to draw the knees towards my chest, have my toes together. Momentarily, I'm going to draw the chin in towards the chest so I can see what I'm doing. Take the hands on the inside of the thighs and slide my fingers down the shins towards my little toes. Just take the hands over the top of the bootlaces, get a nice good connection. I always take a little look at my knees and notice how far apart they are, and then start to lift one leg at a time so I can get, as best I can, that heel above the knee, sort of like a natural 90-degree angle. Then we can do the other leg, and then let the spine gently down to the floor. And try to keep a long neck and relax the shoulders down a little bit. Use the muscles inside the pelvic bowl and towards the tailbone, and draw my bottom back down to the floor, because my body, it kind of rolls up a little bit, get a slightly rounded back. Now, if you happen to be flat to the ground, then you're still going to do the same action. You're going to press into the floor, so you're not going to get so much movement. Now, I've got a little bit of airspace to move into. It's the same sensation, drawing down towards the floor. use this time to draw the knees down towards the ground a little as well. And feel the work in the hip flexors. Possibly a couple of other areas as well. We'll take a little breath from there. We're going to wiggle the fingers around towards the big toe and get a nice hook with that index finger and middle finger. I'll still try to keep the tailbone down on the ground. We're going to gently start to open the legs out wider. They sort of come to their natural place. And then to let the legs open out a little more, I'm going to press out through the heels and try and draw the hips in towards the hip sockets at the same time, so the legs get a chance to straighten out a little more. Now you might start rolling around on the spine a little bit at this point as well. Don't worry if that's happening. And we're using time as our friend to let those legs open out as much as we can. I've used up all the time. I'm going to slowly let the legs come back. Whew. And bring the feet to the floor. Take a little breath there. Myself to turn the page over. I'm going to roll over onto my right side. So hands are pressing to the floor. And allow myself to lift up. So I'm going to come into Dandasana. Bring the thighs together and just roll the flesh out a little bit. Sit up tall. Now, ideally, you want to be feeling that you're lengthening your legs away as you're drawing your toes towards you, which is a more complex request than it sounds. And the hands out to the side, sitting up nice and tall. And then just to add a little bit more fun, we'll take the hands out. Try and keep those shoulders relaxed down, drawing the belly in. Doing your best to sit up your bestest, tallest person you can, and roll the shoulders gently back. And draw the ribs down. So the same position that we had when we were in that low crescent pose, and we were trying to press the shoulders back a little bit. And loosen out. This time we're trying to press the back of the legs lightly into the floor and away. Now we're going to slowly take the hands down. I know Helen's going to love this bit. You can take the hands underneath the back of the thighs and just leave the knees a little towards the body. Squeeze them in. And you're going to lift your chest up towards the sky. And although you're drawing your belly in towards your spine, you're trying to push your lower spine up towards the sky as well. If you lean back, don't go too far. Allow yourself to extend your legs out nice and straight into boat pose. Now, technically, the more advanced version of this will be with the hands away from the legs. But we are going to take this another step further. And I don't want really to exhaust the legs or your sense of balance or your enthusiasm at this point. So this is really to imprint into the muscles. How does it feel to be in this position? I'm going to release the feet to the floor. Let myself sit up. Now the knees roll out to the side. I'll walk the feet back in. I'm going to take those two index finger, middle fingers around the big toe again. Allow myself to just roll gently back, lift the chest. I'm going to take boat pose, but it's the wide leg version. So I'm going to slowly extend the legs out wide as I can, straight as I can, high as I can, and remember to breathe. So just as we did in the happy baby pose, it's the same pose, just happen to be sitting on our sitting bones rather than lying on our backs. We've got that long spine, so that practice of drawing those abdominal muscles in and down, tailbone to the floor, same movement, just a different direction. Gently bring those legs back in. Now I'm going to take the block again, bring that in close, just scoot that underneath, and the legs back out. So as I start to rotate in, you're going to feel that quite a lot in your legs and your hips. So give them a little wriggle, just let them settle back down again. And then we're coming to Janu Shasana. Bringing the right heel into the groin, knee down to the floor, squaring the hips, rolling the thigh in, putting a little bend in to protect. Lifting up, opening the shoulders, folding at the hips over. And the ribs sit down onto the thigh or as close as I can get. And you can lengthen out the hands towards the front of the mat. And then draw, just cupping your heel if you're able to get that far, or hold on to the ankle. And start to draw the leg towards you. And then press through the heel away from you. So you've got a nice yin and yang going on there. The belly drawn in a little bit as well. And then we'll release from there and let ourselves come back up. We'll just do the same to the opposite side. Feeding in, squaring up, rolling it in, lifting it up, sending it out and over. Taking the hands, little cupping of the heel, away, draw the shoulders and arms back. And we can release from there, let ourselves lift up. I can take a breath from there and take that right foot underneath, wrap it out towards the left hip. And we're going to bring the left foot across over towards the right. Same pose pretty much we had at the beginning of the class. Going to tilt the pelvis forwards, going to take the right arm forwards and turn towards the left. But as I do, I'm going to extend my left hand out, roll that round, and see how well I can bind that round to the front of the mat. I'm going to see if I can get my hand onto this front thigh as I roll myself around. This time I am looking over that rear shoulder. Breathe long and slow. Let your body work with your breath. Now we can release. And unravel and take it across to the second side. Just bending through, holding it around. Now normally we have this rear hand on the ground to give us a little support. Drawing it around and trying to get the hand onto that front thigh, the lower leg, means that we have to work a little harder in supporting ourselves. But it also means we get a little chance to be perhaps a little bit different in that rotational sense through the body. and then we can release from there. I'm going to come forwards off of the block. I have the feet about the distance apart of the mat. I'll allow myself to just flex the feet so the toes are towards the sky. I'm going to try and wriggle onto the front edge of the sitting bones. Take the hands as far forward as I can. Press them down onto the floor a little bit. I'm trying to draw the body forwards. And I'm going to release. Bring myself back up. I'm going to take the peace fingers of my left hand around my left toe and lengthen my left leg out. Makes me lean forwards a little bit. I'm going to draw the right hand, index finger around the right foot. Draw the foot a little more in towards my body, and then start to draw the knee back. Try and lift the heel away from the floor. It's called the archer's pose. Now you do want to press down through the back of the leg, and the long leg that's extended. Obviously, you're trying to draw the opposite leg as far away from the front of the mat as you can. The hips are kind of diagonal to the mat at this point. You're just trying to lift that heel to about the height of your knee. Draw it back. So it's pretty fierce on that front arm. Just realize how strong your hip muscles are in comparison. And then we can release. Allow ourselves to sit back up. Lengthen the legs back out again. And we'll just draw the heel in on the left. Take the right out. Hook up again. Allow yourself to rock around a little bit on the sitting bones. And then gradually, as you exhale, see if you can lift that heel up and draw the leg back. So you will be rolling out to the side a little bit. Obviously, pressing down through the back of this long leg that kind of negates us falling over to the side too much. I wouldn't call this the most comfortable place to be, but it is a progression. Almost there, which is good because I'm just about running out of grip. Belly's drawn in, body is rotated around and leaning forwards. That back heel is lifted, and then release it back down to the floor. Just let the legs out, give them a little shake. Now we're going to take the feet a little bit closer in, so I'm going to bend the knees and rock right into the front edge of those sitting bones and start to lay the body forwards. I'm going to kind of wriggle into that, get to a happy place. And take the hands on the inside of my thighs and then walk the hands out underneath the back of the knees. And I'm going to take one arm at a time and just make sure that I feel comfortable. Palm faces down, the elbow joint faces into the floor as well. And then I'll do the same with the other hand. And then I can use my fingers to walk my hands towards the back of the mat. Allow myself to get my arms underneath my legs as best I can, and my body as low to the floor as possible. And once I've done that, I'm going to try and press the heels forwards a little bit. Slide along the floor of the carpet, toes towards the sky. And then you're getting into the tortoise pose. And eventually you get to the point where the head gets to the ground and the body gets low enough that you can straighten the legs out completely. And as you look back on this video, you'll notice that I'm a long way from there. I mean, to me, it feels like I am fundamentally millimeters away from the ground. That's what it feels like. And my eyes are telling me something very different to what my body is feeling. But hopefully got a little bit of space to breathe in. More breaths. Again, to come out of this, start to walk the hands forward a little bit. It does take some wriggling around. Now draw the heels back to allow yourself to lift up. Get the hands out a little further, lift a little closer, and then eventually you come out. Now the option is to shout for help. And eventually you get to the point where you're back up okay, and you can untangle your legs and arms. And at that point, you really have deserved taking Shavasana. So I'm going to take the block to the back of the mat. Get my bum in towards my heels, roll the spine down, arms out, palms face up. I'm going to slide the heels out, one leg at a time. You're going to feel that definitely in those hip flexors, which would have been working very hard in that pose. They wouldn't have really known what was going on. They'd have been a bit confused. They'd have just kind of gone into protection mode if you're unlucky. And that might have been your restricting element for this evening, or it might have just been the strain on the elbows, which is unusual. And as I said at the beginning, you need to take it nice and gently in that part of the pose and work into it gradually. We're down on the floor, taking a nice few deep breaths and softening the jaws, and letting the spine sink into the ground, along with the limbs. And we'll start to move those fingers and toes, breathing gradually deeper and deeper. And then wrists and ankles move around. Start to turn the body back into the room. We'll take advantage of a big stretch, in whatever form that looks like. Allow yourself to instinctively move in a way that feels good in your body. And when you're ready, slide those heels along the floor. And let the knees moving towards the chest. So you can take the simplest, softest hug imaginable. You feel quite profound in your lower back and your hips. Take a little breath from here and roll gently onto the right side. Use the exhale. Press the hands into the floor and move slowly back up to sitting. Assuming you're not still stuck in your tortoise pose. Sitting up tall, we'll bring the hands in towards the heart as we take a deeper breath and close the eyes. At the beginning of an exhale, let the chin drop. Feel the belly draw to the spine and a simple soft bow form in your spine, feeling the practice. And inhale, let the breath build the spine and eventually lift your head, opening your eyes. Namaste. Thank you for joining. Hope you enjoyed experimental evening for core users. See you again soon.